My name is Karina Ward, and I was 32 years old on the day my mother tried to drug me at my wedding. At the time, I didn't know that was what I was watching. I only knew something felt wrong, the kind of wrong that doesn't shout, just tightens quietly in your chest and waits for you to notice. The reception was perfect on the surface. Soft string lights, crystal glasses clinking, laughter rolling across the room like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong for anyone here. My boyfriend Daniel stood a few feet away, talking to his college friends, relaxed in a way I'd rarely seen him around my family. That should have been my first clue. I was at the bar, waiting for another champagne flute, when I caught it in the mirror behind the shelves. My mother, Diane Ward. She stood too close to my drink, close enough that her body blocked it from view. She wasn't talking to anyone. She wasn't smiling. She was watching the room. Then her hand moved. Quick, practiced. 3 drops from a vial no bigger than my pinky nail. She straightened, glanced around, and walked away, smiling the same smile she used when she rearranged people's lives and pretended it was kindness. 32 years of being the strong one snapped into focus. I didn't confront her. I didn't panic. I just stood there staring at my reflection, wondering how many times in my life I'd ignored that same feeling because it was easier to believe my mother wouldn't hurt me. I picked up the glass, and I switched it. Daniel caught my eye from across the room. Something in my face must have changed because he excused himself and came over. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "I think my mom put something in my drink." He didn't laugh, didn't dismiss it. He just looked at the glasses, then at me. "Are you sure?" I saw it in the mirror. 3 drops. She checked if anyone was watching. His jaw tightened. Then switching them was smart. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. 5 minutes passed. Then she raised the glass and drank. I didn't feel relief when my mother finished that glass. I felt sick. For a moment, nothing happened. She laughed at something my aunt said. She touched my father's arm. The room stayed bright and loud and ordinary, and my mind tried to convince me I'd imagined everything, that I'd let years of resentment turn into paranoia on the one day I was supposed to be happy. Then her hand trembled. It was subtle at first, just a flicker, like fatigue. She reached up, pressed her fingers to her temple, smiled too quickly at my father, as if daring her body not to betray her. I watched her knees bend the wrong way, watched confusion slide across her face like a curtain being pulled aside. "Diane," my father said. "I'm fine," she replied already. "Not fine." She stood up and folded. The room went quiet in that sharp, unnatural way that only happens when joy snaps into alarm. Chairs scraped. Someone gasped. My father caught her before she hit the floor, his voice breaking as he called her name over and over, like repetition might undo what was happening. I didn't move toward her. I moved toward memory. Because I'd seen this pattern my entire life, just not this version of it. As people crowded around my mother, my mind drifted backward the way it always did when things didn't make sense. Back to the beginning. Back to the moments that taught me who I was supposed to be in our family. I was 8 years old the first time I learned responsibility could be a punishment. My younger brother Evan was 6. He was playing baseball in the yard while I sat upstairs doing homework. I remember the crack of glass, the sound sharp enough to slice the afternoon in half. A window shattered. Evan cried. My mother rushed outside, scooped him up, wiped his face, and then turned to me. "Karina," she said, already disappointed. "Why weren't you watching him?" I remember blinking at her, confused. I hadn't even known he was outside. "You're the older sister," she continued. "You're supposed to look out for him." I was grounded for 2 weeks. Evan got ice cream. That was the template. When Evan crashed my father's truck at 17, drunk, panicked, terrified, I was 2 hours away at college. My mother didn't ask if he was hurt. She asked why I hadn't been there to drive him. When he got fired from yet another job at 22, she called me not to vent, but to ask how much I could send to cover his rent. I was broke. She knew that. It didn't matter. At 27, Evan convinced my father to pull $15,000 from their retirement to fund a business. It made nothing. 0. Not even an attempt at sustainability. When I questioned it, I was told not to be judgmental, that Evan was finding himself. I never got $15,000. I got handshakes, forced smiles, "We're proud of you," delivered like a consolation prize. My successes were footnotes. His failures were growth opportunities. Daniel saw it long before I admitted it. He worked in hospital operations, the kind of job that trained you to spot patterns before they turned into disasters. 6 months into dating, after one dinner with my parents, he said quietly in the car, "Your mother doesn't see you as a person. She sees you as infrastructure." I laughed it off, told him he was reading too much into it. But at our engagement dinner, my mother spent 40 minutes praising Evan's part-time freelance project like he'd reinvented creativity itself. She leaned across the table, eyes shining, voice soft with admiration. Then she turned to me. "And Karina," she said, the warmth evaporating, "you're still at the insurance firm." "Just got promoted to senior adjuster," I replied. "Oh," she said, unimpressed, already pivoting back to Evan. "That's nice." That night, Daniel said something that lodged in my chest like a truth I couldn't dislodge. "You exist to hold up the room your brother occupies," he told me. "You're not meant to be seen. You're meant to be useful." The engagement made everything worse. My mother immediately asked about Evan's role in the wedding. Best man, special reading, something symbolic. When I said Daniel's friend would be best man and Evan would be a groomsman, her jaw tightened. "That will hurt his feelings." "Then he'll have feelings to deal with," I said, surprising both of us. That was the moment she realized she was losing control. Standing in the reception hall, now watching paramedics kneel beside her, I finally understood something I should have learned years ago. This wasn't about love. It never had been. It was about control, and I had just taken it away. If the glass at the bar was the explosion, then everything before it had been the slow leak no one wanted to investigate. I didn't fully understand that until later, until I had the benefit of distance and documentation and hindsight sharp enough to cut. But the truth was, my mother hadn't suddenly become dangerous at my wedding. She'd been escalating for months, quietly, methodically, the way she did everything. The first sign came 3 months before the ceremony. Daniel was in the kitchen when my phone rang. I answered on speaker, juggling a grocery bag and a half-written seating chart. My mother's voice came through sweet and casual. "I just spoke with your photographer," she said. "We decided it would be better to push the timeline back a couple of hours. Less stress." I froze. "You spoke with who?" I asked. "The photographer," she repeated. It made sense. Trust me. After I hung up, Daniel didn't say anything right away. He just looked at me, eyebrows raised, already opening his laptop. "She wasn't supposed to have their number," I said. "No," he replied calmly, fingers moving. "She wasn't." He found the contract in under a minute, pulled up the emails, called the photographer directly. The timeline hadn't just been pushed back. It had been rewritten: ceremony, delayed reception, shortened vendor overlap that would have collapsed the entire day. "She said it was what you wanted," the photographer told him. Daniel fixed it. Politely. Efficiently. Then he took screenshots, timestamps, email headers, saved everything in a folder labeled simply "wedding." I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Then the caterer called. "Wrong entree count. Dietary restrictions erased. Changes approved by someone claiming to be the bride's mother." Then the florist emailed about a color palette I'd never chosen. Then 2 of my bridesmaids called confused about dates that had suddenly shifted. Each time Daniel caught it, corrected it, logged it. "She's testing boundaries," he said one night. Spreadsheets open across the table, seeing what she can get away with. "I don't want to believe my mom would sabotage my wedding," I replied. He didn't argue. He just kept documenting. My uncle, my father's younger brother, noticed too. At a family barbecue 4 months before the wedding, Evan was talking about a gallery that might show his work someday. My mother glowed like he'd already been commissioned by a museum. "I always knew you were special," she said, touching his arm. My uncle caught my eye, raised an eyebrow. Later, away from the noise, he pulled me aside. "She's been doing this since you were kids," he said quietly. "Your father never stopped it. And now that you're building a life that doesn't revolve around Evan, she's not going to take that well." I wanted to believe he was wrong. The rehearsal dinner proved he wasn't. 30 people, family only. A restaurant my mother insisted on choosing. She stood halfway through, dessert glass in hand, and smiled like a woman who owned the room. "I'm so grateful for this family," she began. "For the children who've brought such richness into our lives." Her eyes found Evan instantly, softened. "Evan," she said, voice warm, "you've always reminded us to see beauty differently. Your creativity, your sensitivity, they're gifts." He beamed. Then she turned to me. "And Karina," she said, shoulders stiffening, "you're so reliable, so steady. We always know we can count on you." That was it. Not love, not pride, utility. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. My uncle stared at his plate like he was restraining himself. After dinner, Evan cornered me. "Can I do a reading during the ceremony?" he asked. I wrote something about sibling bonds. "We finalized the program months ago," I replied. "It's not happening." His face fell. "After everything Mom and Dad did for this wedding." "We paid for it ourselves," I said. "Hosting the rehearsal dinner isn't leverage." He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "You've changed," he said. "No," I replied. I stopped pretending this is normal. He walked straight to my mother. They spoke in low voices, both glancing at me. Her fingers tightened around her glass. She wasn't upset. She was thinking. And when she smiled at him, that small, satisfied smile, I felt it in my bones. She'd made a decision. The wedding itself was flawless. That was the cruel irony of it. After months of interference and quiet damage control, the day unfolded exactly as Daniel and I had planned. $18,000, each split evenly paid with our own money, our own choices. The Riverside Inn looked like something pulled from a magazine. 200 guests. Soft music drifting across the water. Late afternoon sunlight catching on glass and linen. I remember thinking maybe we made it through. The ceremony went smoothly. I didn't look at my mother once while I said my vows. I looked at Daniel, at the way his hands shook just slightly when he held mine, at the steadiness in his eyes, at the life we were choosing on purpose. Cocktail hour followed. Laughter loosened the air. People moved in clusters, reconnecting, celebrating. I felt almost normal, almost safe. Then came the toasts. Daniel's best friend went first. A story about college, a badly fixed faucet that flooded an apartment. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, the sound a little thinner than usual, but real. Then my mother stood up. She didn't wait to be invited. She never did. She lifted her champagne flute and smiled at the room like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. I want to thank everyone for being here today, she began. Family means everything to us. Her eyes found Evan. Evan, she said, warmth blooming across her face. You've always reminded me what truly matters. Passion, creativity, following your heart. He nodded emotional, soaking it in like oxygen. Then she turned to me. The warmth vanished. Karina, she said, voice flattening. You've always been the dependable one, the one who handles things. I know you'll take care of Daniel. That's what you do. She raised her glass. Everyone followed. That was when I saw it. Just for a second before she masked its satisfaction. A flicker of anticipation. Her eyes cut to me sharp and knowing like she was waiting for a cue only she understood. My stomach dropped. 10 minutes earlier. The bar, the mirror, the vial. She was watching me, waiting. I looked down at my glass, then at Daniel's. My mind raced through every possible response. If I confronted her without proof, she'd cry. My father would defend her. I'd be the hysterical daughter attacking her own mother at her wedding. She would win by losing. Daniel leaned in. What's wrong? Low, controlled, concerned. I think my mom put something in my drink earlier, I whispered. I saw it in the mirror. 3 drops from a vial. His eyes widened just a fraction. You're sure? I'm sure enough. He didn't hesitate. He looked at the glasses, then back at me. Switch them, he said quietly. If you're wrong, nothing happens. If you're right, she won't get far. My hands felt numb as I moved. It felt surreal, like stepping into a role I never auditioned for. I placed her glass where mine had been, took the clean one back to our table. My pulse roared in my ears. Daniel's hand found mine. He was shaking too. Now we wait, he said. 5 minutes passed. I started to doubt myself. Then my mother lifted her glass. She took a long drink, smiled at my father, set it down like everything was exactly as she'd planned. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her hand trembled. She touched her forehead. Diane, my father said, concern sharpening his voice. I'm fine, she replied too quickly. She tried to stand. Her legs gave out. My father caught her as she collapsed back into her chair, her eyes rolling her words, slurring into nothing. The room went dead silent. I didn't feel victorious. I felt terrified, because now there were witnesses. And I knew one thing with absolute clarity. If I froze, she would rewrite this, and I would lose again. Training takes over when shock wears thin. I didn't rush to my mother's side. I didn't cry out or collapse or make myself part of the spectacle. I moved not emotionally, but strategically, because I knew exactly what would happen if I didn't. If I hesitated, she would become the victim. Daniel moved first. Give her space, he said, voice steady, cutting through the panic. Someone get water. Please step back. People listened. Authority does that when it's calm. My father was on his knees beside my mother, calling her name, hands shaking. Evan pushed through the crowd, face pale. What happened, he demanded. She collapsed, my father said. I didn't answer him. I turned toward the bar. Toward proof. Daniel followed without asking. What are you doing, he whispered. Building a case, I replied. My phone was already out. I photographed everything. The glasses, the name cards, the placement, the bar setup. The bartender hovered nearby, pale and panicked. I didn't do anything, she said quickly. Just champagne. I know, I said. This isn't about you. Do you have cameras? Daniel asked. Yes, as she nodded. One over the bar. Please don't let anyone touch that footage, he said. We'll need it. Paramedics were called. People murmured. The wedding coordinator hovered on the edge of a breakdown. Daniel met me halfway across the room. Her purse, he said quietly. We need it before anyone else touches it. My mother's clutch was still on the chair where she'd been sitting. No one was watching us. Everyone's attention was fixed on her. Daniel lifted it carefully, like evidence, because that's what it was now. I opened it without touching anything inside. Lipstick, tissues, and there it was. A small glass vial barely half an inch tall tucked into the side pocket. Residue still clung to the inside. My breath caught. That's it, Daniel whispered. Don't touch it, I said. We hand it over exactly like this. The paramedics arrived moments later. Efficient, focused. One of them looked up as Daniel held the purse slightly away from his body. There's a vial in her bag, Daniel said. We haven't touched it. It needs to go with her. The paramedic peered inside, careful. Could be a sedative, he said. We'll need talk screens. She's going to county. They loaded her onto the stretcher and left with my father following, dazed. The room emptied fast after that. The celebration was over. Everyone knew it. The coordinator approached me, eyes wide. Should we continue? No, Daniel said before I could speak. Send everyone home. We'll handle payment tomorrow. My uncle stepped forward. I saw her earlier, he said, at the bar. She was hovering, kept looking around. Daniel's mother spoke next. I saw it too. She looked nervous. Daniel wrote everything down. Names, times, statements. The police arrived 15 minutes later. 2 county officers. One introduced himself as Officer Hayes. Walk me through what happened, he said. I told him everything. The sabotage, the rehearsal dinner, the mirror at the bar, the switch. You switched the glasses, he asked. Yes. Why? Because confronting her without proof would have made me the villain, I said. And because I've spent 32 years watching her control narratives. He studied me for a long moment. You in law enforcement. Insurance claims, I replied. I investigate incidents. He almost smiled. Daniel handed over the screenshots, emails, vendor logs. Hayes' partner let out a low whistle. This isn't impulsive, he said. This is premeditation. The venue manager pulled up the footage. Black and white, silent. My mother alone at the bar, looking over her shoulder, pulling the vial from her clutch. 3 seconds, tipping it into the glass. Undeniable. Hayes nodded slowly. You protected yourself, he said. We're opening an investigation. Attempted assault with a controlled substance. As they left with copies of the footage, I realized something strange. The wedding wasn't ruined. The lie was. County medical smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. By the time Daniel and I arrived, it was past 7. The adrenaline that had carried me through the reception was wearing off, leaving something heavier in its place, a cold, hollow awareness that this wasn't a scene anymore. This was real life, unfolding in fluorescent light. My father sat alone in the waiting area, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it had betrayed him. Karina, he said when he saw me. His voice cracked. She's stable. They're running talk screens. Good, I said. He flinched. Evan's in the bathroom. This is hard for him. I didn't respond. How could this happen? My father asked, shaking his head. The doctors think it was a reaction. Stress, maybe. Dad, I said gently but firmly. She didn't collapse from stress. He looked up at me confused. She collapsed because she tried to drug me. I continued, and drank it herself. The words hung between us like something poisonous. That's not funny, he said automatically. It's not a joke, I replied. There's video. There's a vial from her purse. The police are opening an investigation. Daniel stepped closer, grounding. We have witnesses, he added. This isn't speculation. My father sat down hard like his legs had given out. No, he whispered. Diane wouldn't. Down the hall, voices rose. My Aunt Carol appeared, anger already loaded into her posture. What did you do to her? She demanded. She collapses at your wedding, and now I hear police are involved. She tried to drug me, I said evenly. Carol scoffed. That's ridiculous. Daniel held up his phone. There's video. Silence. Evan returned, then eyes red face wrecked. What's going on? I didn't answer. Daniel turned the screen toward him and pressed play. He watched. His face changed the way mine had, earlier confusion, denial, horror. Something breaking loose underneath. There has to be an explanation, he whispered. There is, I said. She did it. Uncle Mark, my father's brother, stepped into the circle. Carol, he said tiredly. I saw her too. She was acting strange. This isn't a misunderstanding. Carol looked around, realizing the ground beneath her had disappeared. They said we can see her now, a nurse announced. Room 312. We walked down the hall together. Me, Daniel, my father, Evan, my Uncle Carol. My mother was propped up in bed, IV in her arm, eyes sharp despite everything. She saw me and her mouth tightened. You did this, she said. Daniel's phone came up immediately. Recording. Keep talking, he said softly. This is private, she snapped. No, I replied, it isn't. Diane, my father said, voice trembling. Did you put something in Karina's drink? Too long. Silence always told the truth. It wasn't like that, she said finally. So you did, I replied. I was protecting the family, she insisted, eyes sliding toward Daniel with open hatred. She's controlling her, turning her against us. Daniel didn't raise his voice. Karina stopped playing her role, he said calmly. That threatened your system. So you tried to remove the problem. That's not. You tried to drug her at her wedding, he continued. That's not protection. That's assault. My mother twisted the hospital blanket in her hands. You don't understand what I've sacrificed, she said. What sacrifice, I asked. You had 2 children. You destroyed one to prop up the other. Evan stood frozen. My father's voice dropped different now. Steady. Dangerous. Did you plan this, he asked. She looked at him. Yes, she said. I planned it. My father nodded once. Then he stood up. I've spent 34 years not seeing this, he said quietly. I won't do it anymore. He walked out. Evan followed without a word. Carol lingered, then left too. Just me, Daniel, and my mother. I just wanted things to go back to normal, she whispered. There was no normal, I said, just control. Daniel touched my arm. We're done here. We left while she called after us. In the parking lot, my father leaned against his truck, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. What happens now, he asked. Now I said you stopped choosing peace over truth. He nodded slowly. For the first time in my life, he looked like he understood. The arrest happened 3 days later. The hospital released my mother in the morning. By the afternoon, 2 deputies were waiting in the lobby. There was no spectacle, no shouting, just paperwork, cuffs, and the quiet click of a door closing on a version of her life she'd believed was untouchable. The news traveled fast. Too fast. My phone lit up with numbers I didn't recognize, distant relatives suddenly invested in understanding both sides. Daniel answered none of them. He took my phone that first night, set it face down on the kitchen counter, and said, You don't owe anyone a performance. The district attorney didn't hesitate. The footage was clean. The vial tested positive for a prescription sedative she wasn't prescribed. The charge was clear attempted assault with a controlled substance. My mother's lawyer tried to spin it. Stress. Diminished capacity. Maternal concern taken too far. The DA wasn't interested. Neither was the judge. My father filed for divorce the same week. When he told me, his voice sounded different, steadier, stripped of the excuses he'd used my whole life. I should have stopped this years ago, he said. I told myself keeping the peace mattered more than the truth. I was wrong. What changes now, I asked. Everything, he replied. I'm cutting Evan off. No more money, no more safety net. 6 months to get a job and move out. He's not going to take that well. I know, my father said, but I'm done enabling it. Evan called me 4 days after the arrest. We met at a coffee shop neither of us had ever been to before. Like neutral territory might make the conversation easier. He looked exhausted, unshaven, smaller. Dad's filing for divorce, he said. I know. She's still our mom, he added defensive. She's going through hell. She put herself there, I replied. He leaned forward. You could drop the charges. I'm not pressing charges, I said calmly. The state is. Because she tried to drug me. You're tearing the family apart. No, I said, meeting his eyes. I just stopped holding it together with my bare hands. That landed. He stood up without finishing his coffee and left. At work, something unexpected happened. An email went out from my director department-wide. Karina Ward will be taking 2 weeks of personal leave effective immediately. Any questions about her account should be directed to me. Commentary on her personal life is not appropriate. We support our team members. No exceptions. I read it twice. Daniel smiled when I showed him. Chosen family, he said. 6 weeks later, my mother pled guilty. 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation, mandatory counseling. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a voice that didn't waver. Attempting to drug your daughter at her wedding demonstrates a profound lack of boundaries, she said. That is not protection. That is control. My mother said the same thing she always had. I was trying to protect my family. The judge leaned forward. By drugging your child, she asked, you didn't mean to drink it yourself. That's the only part you regret. Gavel down. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something quieter. Finality. 4 months after the sentencing, the noise finally died down. No more frantic calls. No more relatives pretending neutrality. Just space, unfamiliar quiet space, and the slow realization that peace didn't have to be negotiated anymore. Evan got a job. Retail. Part-time. A small bookstore on the edge of town. 26 hours a week. He called me the night it happened. Voice tentative, like he wasn't sure I'd answer. I wanted you to know, he said. It's not art. It's not what I thought I'd be doing at 30. It's income, I replied. That matters more than you think. There was a pause. I'm in therapy, he added, trying to figure out who I am without Mom telling me I'm special. That's a good place to start. Weeks later, Daniel came home late one evening and sat down on the couch without taking off his shoes. His hands were shaking. I've been holding it together, he said quietly, since the wedding, being calm, being prepared, being the one who documents and plans. Today, someone at work asked how our wedding was. His voice cracked. I pulled him close and let him cry, not loudly, not dramatically, just the kind of crying that comes when you finally feel safe enough to stop bracing. I'm scared, he whispered, that she'll get out and come back, that this isn't really over. I held him tighter. We handle it the way we handled everything else, together. 14 months after the wedding, the doorbell rang during dinner. I opened it. My mother stood on the porch. She looked older, smaller, no polish left to weaponize, 2 weeks out on early parole. Can we talk? She asked. Daniel appeared behind me, solid and unmoving. What do you want? He asked. I wanted to apologize, she said. I've been in therapy. I know what I did was wrong. You tried to drug her, Daniel said flatly. I know, she replied, because she chose you over the system I built. The honesty surprised me. I'm not asking to come back into your life, she continued. I just needed you to know I understand what I did. I believed her. That didn't mean I forgave her. Thank you for saying it, I said. But this is as far as it goes. She nodded and left without argument. 6 months later, Evan asked to meet again. He looked better, clearer, had his own studio apartment now, paid his own rent. Can we try again, he asked, as siblings, not whatever we were before. I took my time answering. We can try, I said, but we're equals now. I don't fix your problems. I don't cover for you. You prove it with consistency. He nodded. I will. 2 weeks after that, Daniel came home with plane tickets. Scotland, he said, grinning. 2 weeks. The honeymoon we never took. 3 days before we left, I opened the old family group chat, the one that had defined my childhood. I deleted it. On the flight over the Atlantic, Daniel squeezed my hand. You know what's funny, he said. She tried to ruin our wedding, and somehow she made us stronger. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was true, and because for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight.